Welcome back to Maddy Mania, guys. Today is all about Teen Wolf. Oh my god, what a moment in time that was. Teen Wolf, loosely based off the 80s movie with Michael J. Fox, but totally turned into something completely different. A full-fledged cultural phenomenon at a time where there were competing what so few shows centered around high schoolers nowadays do. While yes, they have the supernatural elements, they stayed grounded with what's going on in a high schooler's life, and I think that is something that made the show stand out to me. They also did something that a lot of shows at the time weren't daring to do by having openly gay characters. So shout out to everyone involved with Teen Wolf. Obviously, Dylan O'Brien is now an A-lister in his own right, and same with Arden with K-pop Demon Hunters, and I just want to commend them for coming from a show like Teen Wolf that, gets a little flack for the CGI and sometimes some corny things, but overall, I think it's what catapulted them to the kinds of careers they have now. So give some background on my experience with Teen Wolf. I started watching it when I was 11, maybe a little too young to be watching a scary werewolf show on MTV, but I didn't care. I was hooked from the very first episode. I think the dynamic in season 1 is probably my favorite besides season 3, and they did a really great job laying the foundation of what would become one of TV's most beloved shows. So season 1, I think the Scott and Allison arc was one of the big reasons why I was tuned in, like the Romeo and Juliet story, the werewolf versus the hunter, but still falling in love. That is always a really good trope to be included in modern television. And another thing that I want to highlight that they did super well is friendship beyond anything. The showcasing of Styles and Scott, bros for life, and then eventually when they are friends with Derek, and then when Liam comes along, just the friendship in those shows was everything. I think same with Lydia and Allison, though we'll learn later they definitely could have done a bit more with that before Allison died. I think highlighting strong, powerful female friendships was super important at that time as well, because a lot of their fan base were middle school and high school girls, and they needed to be able to see that on modern day television. Go through a couple years and we're at season 3, a lot of people's favorite season for a reason, because we got to see Voight Styles, a different side of him and Dylan O'Brien's range. I think they did a phenomenal job with storytelling in those episodes that centered around the dynamic and the fact that Dylan was able to showcase both sides so well. That is like a true actor. Very glad, and I commend him for that performance, and I'm glad that the showrunner trusted him in portraying that vision. I think there was a lot of unfair hatred once Kira came along as Scott's new love interest. I think everyone missed Allison, of course. I was no different. I wanted Scott and Allison to run off in the sunset. Everybody was rooting for that Romeo and Juliet love to be endgame, and I don't blame anyone for that. I think it definitely gets different when there is not only like hatred for the character, but spewed at Arden as a person when she's just doing her job as an actress. And I still think that the chemistry between Kira and Scott was great. It may not have been as good as he had with Allison, or maybe it's just different, but I think that people need to go back and rewatch now and realize that the Kira and Scott hate was very forced. And somebody who I think also got a bit of flack, but was one of my favorite characters, well, two actually, Malia and Isaac. They kind of came into an already established show with already established characters, and sometimes it's hard to like new characters as much as the OG ones whenever new seasons come along. But I think that they both did a great job, and I think it was just funny that the actor who played Isaac was also on The Vampire / The Originals around the same time, and it was funny to kind of see him in both universes where there's werewolves and vampires and other supernatural entities. There was definitely some kind of rivalry with fans that either only liked TVD or only liked Teen Wolf, but I got the best of both worlds. I loved both, even to this day. Two of my favorite shows, and I definitely will do a Vampire Diaries episode eventually, but I just want to highlight how good of a job that Teen Wolf did distinguishing themselves from that and not getting caught up with the types of shows and movies that were coming out at that time, which were very like supernatural fantasy heavy. Literally a show called Supernatural, of course, too. But Teen Wolf kind of just set themselves apart, and I think that's due to the writing and like keeping that high school core while still, having the high stakes of managing being a emerging alpha wolf. I think the cast and the way they portrayed the characters was great, and I loved always seeing them at cons interacting in person. I think Teen Wolf was like one of the few fandoms I actually used Tumblr for because most people lived on there and it was just fun to chat and see fan theories and fan art and different things. And I think that Teen Wolf is one of those like culturally relevant shows. I mean, they made the movie, they made a spin-off. It's always something that people are going to look back on and be like, wow, that was really a moment for like supernatural fantasy shows. And Teen Wolf was like head of charge for that for a while. I think, again, going back to the Vampire Diaries debate, there were definitely like seasons where TVD was up there versus where Teen Wolf was up there. But I will say season 3 of both shows were their best, which, ironic, I don't know. But I just really love that show so much, and I'm excited to rewatch it soon because things, as I'm talking about this, like different scenes and things are coming back to me, and it was great to be able to chat with the guests that are about to pop on the pod that are associated with the show and just see from their perspective what they thought about in real time while they were making the show, if they even thought it would blow up the way it did, and I don't think they did. So I am just like proud of the work that went into creating this masterpiece, and hopefully you guys love the episode, love the show, support the actors now and their different endeavors. Tyler became Superman. Other Tyler was in this wrestling movie I like, Queen of the Ring, pretty recently. Yeah, just really cool to see how far all of them have come. If you survived Tumblr in 2013, if you've ever rewatched a hallway scene 47 times just because of eye contact, and if you learned what yearning was from a supernatural teen drama on MTV, then you already know where we're going with this. Teen Wolf wasn't just wolves and fighting scenes, it was intensity, it was found family, it was yearning that felt bigger than anything else at the time. And today I get to talk to someone who was in the writer's room, shaping those choices, those arcs, those moments that permanently altered our brain chemistry. And we ask why it hit so hard. So welcome to Maddy Mania, Angela Harvey. The music of that world, the tension, the darkness, the emotional undercurrent that made hallway glances feel like forever, all came from the show's composer, Dino Meneghin. He scored a little show on MTV called Teen Wolf, and 7 seasons later, that little show was a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Fandom that dissected every single cue, and a generation that still hears certain notes and are instantly transported back to Beacon Hills. And on Maddy Mania, we don't just talk about what we watched. We talk about how something becomes part of your emotional blueprint. So let's get into it. Welcome to Maddy Mania. Today we have a very special guest, a writer from one of my favorite shows, your favorite show, Teen Wolf. Welcome, Angela Harvey.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the
Thanks for
Teen
joining.
Wolf fandom lives on.
Always Beacon Hills forever.
Yes.
Well, I just want to start off kind of asking you, did you feel like all that weight while writing about Teen Wolf, how intense it would become like as a fandom show?
Not at all. Not at all. It's just a very different experience on the show versus the fandom, particularly at the beginning, because we were kind of at the beginning edge of internet fandom. Like, it wasn't really as huge online
Mm-hmm.
at that time. So it was such a new experience. There wasn't there wasn't pressure. So we just didn't know what was going to happen. And also the marketing side was so separate from the writing side.
Yeah.
So the folks who worked at MTV were a lot more engaged with fandom than we were as creatives.
Yeah, that makes sense. You guys were just kind of doing the decisions and seeing how it would land and then realizing later on, like, oh my God, they're loving this. We got to keep going with it.
Yeah, yeah, we very intentionally, we were the fans we wanted to please. Very intentionally. It was because once you start getting in your head about what do people want from me, it's over. Like,
Yeah,
forget it. But you gotta write what you want to see.
totally get that. Going off that, I guess, was there ever a storyline that you were coming up with that you kind of knew would matter, even if it wasn't the obvious choice initially?
It felt like a lot of things mattered to the fans that we didn't necessarily know about. Like, there's not a version where what the fans wanted to see was leading creative. That's not a thing that happens much,
Yeah.
honestly, in TV. I mean, I'm sure there are some shows that operate like that, but Teen Wolf wasn't one of them. I know, like, I mean, we can't really talk about Teen Wolf without talking about like Steric versus Stydia. And so that was always, you know, back of the mind. But as much as the whole Steric idea took off online, that just wasn't something that the showrunners wanted to do. So that's it. That's it. You know, that first year we went to Comic Con, our first year or the second? I think it must have been the second year because people were paying attention. The first year, no one cared at all. The second year, you know, the cast was out on the boat, and like Dylan and Tyler were like hugged up, and they put creator had no idea. No idea any of that happened. And then I think it was in like TV Guide or something, and it was a big deal online. No clue. Zero clue. I think Steric existed in the imagination of the fans for a good year, year and a half before actually we knew.
Wow. Kind of going off that a little bit, did you ever kind of personally want to put forth like any relationships in the show, or like there one that was kind of like your favorite to write for?
If there's favorites, I just love that the show is about friendship. Like, I'm a big fan of platonic relationships on television.
Me too.
So those were my favorite. I would have loved to do actually more with Holland and Crystal, or you know, Lydia and Allison.
Mhm.
Um I think uh all the women, I think, not just on Teen Wolf, but like across television, there's like a tendency to make those relationships a little bit mean girls. And you know, I would rather we do less of, particularly in high school. Particularly in high school. I did find Scott and Kira interesting. I
Mhm.
think we didn't maybe do as much with them as we could have, particularly with Kira's powers. I think
Yeah.
we could have delved into a little bit deeper, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, there there was so much focus on like a lot of the romantic ships that sometimes the friendships took like the second tier, but yeah, Allison and Lydia, Scott and Styles, obviously. Then when Liam came in,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Liam and Mason, that was cute. I feel like Scott and Styles was pretty much, you know, pretty much at the core of the show until, you know, we didn't have Dylan as much. So it was harder to keep that relationship front and center.
yeah,
But yeah, that was the core of the show at the end of the day.
definitely. Yeah. I guess next one, was there ever a scene that was like super hard for you to write since there's so many themes on the show? Like, was there ever something that kind of stumped you, or you just had to dive in even more than usual?
Oh, that's a really good question. I feel like I don't know if it was like scenes or storylines as much as it was seasons. Some of the seasons that were harder to crack. When we did the assassins, we got into in season 4. We had like we were coming up with all these different assassins coming to town, and it was kind of fun, and some of them were really funny. But after we had done B, which was so dark and just driving folks apart, we wanted to do we wanted to lighten it up a little bit, and tonally that was hard to get our arms around. So I would say, yeah, tonally, I think season 4 might have been the hardest. When someone's coming to kill you, they don't really get to stick around very long, you know. So
Right.
you can't really get to, like season 3B when we have Nogitsune and Evil Styles, it's like this, the emotional stakes are so high. And then you go like, okay, well now these two orphan kids want to just kill me. So like, they got to be dead by the end of the episode, so we can't really spend a whole lot of time with them. So that season was tough, episode by episode to crack.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, especially I feel like a lot of people, including mine, season 3 is their favorite because
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Void style storyline.
Yeah, 100%. Because he's such a rock star. He just really leans into that. And like I've said before, some of that season doesn't even make sense. Like, like he goes and he's tearing up the hospital, and that Bad Moon Rising song is playing, which is such a great song. But you're like, what is he doing here? Why is this happening? It doesn't matter. It's just a vibe. It's a vibe.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, next question. This one might be a bit of a toughie, but is there a character that you feel was misunderstood by the audience at all?
That's a good question. It's a tougher question to answer just because I don't honestly, I never did. I was never like on Tumblr. The
Hmm.
tweets that I did see were kind of sporadic. So I don't really know 100% like how fandom engaged, how fandom reacted. But I guess maybe Kira. She came in and she's funny, like like Arden brings. You see a lot of her humor, and she's still like killing it right now with Rumi and
Yeah.
in K-pop. Like, I think that because Allison had just died, people thought that she was supposed to be some kind of replacement, and she wasn't. Like, I think even if Allison had, she would have still been in the show,
Yeah.
whether Allison was there or not. I think it took people a minute to warm up to her based on what I saw online. But
That's factual.
she's actually one of my favorite characters. Yeah, what?
I said that's factual. I can confirm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, Crystal, she wanted to go off and do some other stuff, and her contract was up, so I remember the promo, a hero will fall.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I cried like the first time I saw it because like timeline wise, I was 11 when the show started and then I was 18 when it ended. So I was like this little young girl. I was like, what happened to Allison? Like, why did they?
I know. And it does. It kind of comes out of nowhere, and you think, no, they're gonna figure it out, and nope. That
Okay.
was sad.
It was. It was. But yeah, Kira's great and people they were just clinging on to Allison, I get. But yeah, Kira's great and she's her own person in her own right and her with Scott was great too. So yeah, I love that ship too.
It was like the season what we did. I think it was season 5A, if I recall correctly, and she was with the Skinwalkers.
Hmm.
I really wanted to do more with her there. I thought that there was just like a lot of space to play around with on that one, but there was just a lot of plot happening, and yeah. Few scenes that I'm like, oh my god, I love the scene in the Derek's loft when she hangs the lights, and like, yeah, I think that she was a little underutilized.
Yeah. Um, Going off of that, was there a moment that you knew would kind of emotionally devastate audiences? I think we kind of named that one, but
Yeah, we did. But you know what the other one is, and actually, Team Up was my first writing job, so I learned a lot on that show. And one of the ways I really learned to trust my instincts was that really fought the writers to do a funeral for Boyd. And I had like this cool, like Wolfsbane and fire type of memorial vibe that I really wanted to do. And, Derek's trying to build his pack and he loses a wolf. Like, I really wanted to lean into that storyline, and we didn't do it. And
mm.
then, like, a season and a half, 2 seasons later, the upper level writers were like, you were right. You were right. We should have done that. And I was like, yes, I was. I wish that had happened. I think it would have had a similar amount of emotional resonance.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not as similar as like main character day one, you're going down,
Right.
but like it would have packed a punch.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, okay. Next question for you. When writing for characters like Styles and Lydia, who personally I think those were the two that fans were like most overprotective over,
Mm-hmm.
does that like change how you approach their vulnerability at all?
Not at all. Uh, I love both of those characters, and they're both such good actors. I don't think that had anything to do with fandom as much as it had to do with like what they wanted to do, what they were wanted to lean in on and lean out of. Like that drives you quite a bit. It's tough with Lydia. Like Lydia's a tough character to write for just because her powers were so cerebral.
Yeah.
So it's, we have this like action packed comic book type of show and this very cerebral character who doesn't necessarily like, even when you look at like Marvel and you have a character like Scarlet Witch, like she pops in every once in a while, gestures and stuff, but it's really difficult to keep those characters who don't have the strength as their main power to stay in the center of the action.
Yeah.
So I think that affected her storyline quite a bit. Same with Styles, with having no powers at all.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the brains of the operation. So that was his murder board was his superpower. But when there's a fight, we don't have a whole lot to give him.
Yeah, his lacrosse stick. And what do you think that they kind of did that other shows might have missed around their same time about like those kinds of dynamics?
I think they leaned out pretty quickly, if I recall correctly. So,
Yeah.
like, I was the resident Vampire Diaries watcher on our show because, like, there was like a little bit of a Teen Wolf Vampire Diaries little rivalry. We played them in softball when we were set in Atlanta, when we were both shooting in Atlanta.
That's
But
so funny.
yeah, it was pretty funny. It was fun, but so it was kind of my job to keep an eye on what they're doing, so we didn't steal any of their ideas. And um, I don't think they were trying to do high school. I think they really wanted to tell a more mature storyline. Like I
Mhm.
think out of the first season, they kept some of that stuff from the books, and then they leaned out really quickly. To be fair, but we were definitely a high school show. We wanted to like the things that are front and center for high schoolers. We just kept and like friendships. Social life is key, but also like really caring about your future and really wanting to, caring about the sport that you play and
Mhm.
your grades. Like, it's kind of like the tension of the series was like Scott just wants to be a normal kid, but now he's a freaking werewolf. I think putting that tension at the center of the show is really what made it work.
Yeah, agreed.
Scott's desire to just have a girlfriend and be good at sports.
Yeah, and be a good kid for his mom.
Yeah. Aw.
Mo
Be your own anchor. A lot of people have the be your own anchor tattoo.
Oh,
So like,
really?
yes, I went to I think Comic Con or maybe it was WonderCon. I don't remember. I went to one of those things, and tons of people had "Be Your Own Anchor" tattooed on there. And this is the side of when I meet people in real life that are real Teen Wolf fans. Like that is super fun.
Yeah.
That's I love that. And one girl actually said that she was still here because of Derek Hale. Like she was like,
Oh,
oh, he can lose his whole family and still stay present and still keep life. She's like, I can stick around too. And
wow.
that blew me away. That blew me away. But that's the power of a story.
Yeah, that's the type that stays with you forever, honestly.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay.
Not to make it all heavy.
No, you're
I
fine.
just believe in the power of story, which is why I do this for a living.
Exactly. Okay, next question. Looking back, is there any type of arc that you would kind of adjust or want to change?
Not that it's perfect, it's just that like things happen, things work out the way that they work out, and it's like, yeah, if you undo one thing, you're gonna unravel something else. It's just so hard. Things are so intertwined both creatively and logistically.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean, you did the Marvel analogy earlier with Scarlet Witch. I feel like this show was like its own Marvel Cinematic Universe, but within the Teen Wolf universe. Like, if you messed up one thing, then it would like mess up something else for sure.
literally very intertwined. Yeah, yeah, that's a huge compliment.
I mean, I'm like
That's
into
so
all
fun.
that kind of stuff, like superhero, supernatural type of stuff, fantasy, anything like that. So, yeah, like I love the Marvel movies and stuff, but show-wise, Teen Wolf is up there like top 5 for me.
Amazing. And it's still one of my favorite. It's still my favorite show I've written on. I like season one. Season one's my favorite season still.
Really? Mine's
Yeah, I
probably
didn't even write on that. Maybe it's because I didn't write on it. So maybe I experienced season one, even though I was on set helping. Maybe I experienced season one more like a fan.
yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
true. You're
yeah,
seeing from the beginning and then you got to jump in after. So, yeah.
yeah.
This one, next question, a fun one, I feel like. Which character do you think would like absolutely be chronically online, like fighting people on Twitter?
Oh my God, probably Lydia. You say something snarky to Lydia, and she'd be like, and showing up with the receipts.
Facts and like defending the friend group for sure. Like
For sure.
loyal to her core. I love that.
Yes. Also, I feel like people who are chronically online have to multitask a lot, so she would be capable of that.
That's
Yeah.
what I like. I consider myself that because one is part of the job. Like as a public, you kind of hinted at this one. Maybe season one is the answer, but if you had to live inside one season forever, which would it be? Like if you were a character.
It's so unsafe in Beacon Hills. I don't know why anybody stays there. Yeah, maybe season one. It is the closest to like normal life, even though
Yeah.
there's like a murderous werewolf on the loose. But he is like attacking very specific people. So yeah, we gotta be safe. Yeah, let's go ahead and stay in season one.
I love that. And like the hunters wouldn't be after you because you're just a normal person. You're totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're gonna do season one.
Perfect. And then kind of, is there one line of dialogue or maybe a scene if it's not just one line that you're like most proud of that you wrote?
There is one line, and it's like not even a big line. It's not like moving or anything, but it made everybody laugh so, in the writers' room, and so I'm like, oh yeah. When I forget what season it is, but they're trying to break into Viking house,
Mm-hmm.
and the only weapon they have is Kira's sword. It's a belt sword, and they're trying to take. She goes, no, 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 no! I need the belt. It's crucial to the outfit.
Wait, I remember this. Yes.
Yeah, I need the belt. It's crucial to the outfit. I wrote it um at home in my pajamas, and then when we were all reading it in the room, everybody laughed, and I was like, hey, and that line was a survivor. So that one made it into the show.
Good. I love that. And yeah, it's very funny. And you need those funny moments when it's like such high stakes all the time.
Yeah, oh my god, it's exhausting. You have to have like the lighthearted moments.
Is there a most kind of like unhinged fan theory that comes to mind? Like,
Yes. But I mean, to be fair, like TV shows do that stuff all the time where it's like
yeah.
you believe someone's dead and then they're not. And with the Steric thing, like I don't think it was unhinged. I think, they were funny. Styles and Derek were funny together, and it's one of the first shows that was like featuring openly gay people, and
Mm,
I think I don't know what all was happening, but I do think that theory got fed like a little bit online from our side, not necessarily creatives, but like the marketing side. I think like leaned in for engagement on that one. So I don't think it was unhinged. It was never gonna happen.
yeah, that
Um,
makes sense. And then a non-Teen Wolf question for you. Is there anything you're listening to, watching, or reading nowadays that you'd like to share?
I love Shrinking. I think that show is so good. I think it's one of the best things on TV right now. I get so frustrated when I'm all caught up. Like they got us so like into the binging habit, and now it's like, okay, I gotta wait another week, which I think is a better way to watch TV because I think you need that week in between for folks to digest the story and talk about it with their friends and build word of mouth. But when it says next episode next Thursday, I'm upset. Shrinking is my favorite thing I'm watching right now. I love The Diplomat. I think we needed some. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that's like Teen Wolf esque, like a genre type of vibe, and nothing is springing to mind. I don't even know if folks are making that right now.
No, it was very I feel like it was like very popular all at once with like Supernatural, Vampire Diaries, Teen Wolf,
Yeah,
all that, but yeah, right now not so much.
yeah. I think they're making a Twilight series, if I recall correctly. So hopefully that'll be out soon. I did enjoy Summer I Turned Pretty
Mhm.
as much as Belly Conklin is a menace. I did like I liked watching that one.
Yeah.
I'm in a phase where I need things to not be stressful when I'm watching. Like I don't have the world is on fire. I don't have the emotional energy for stressful television. So yeah, watching Love Island All Stars.
See, I've never gotten into Love Island. I did watch The Summer I Turned Pretty, of course. Shrinking's on my list. I'm a big Harrison Ford fan because a big Indiana Jones fan. I'm watching, this is probably stressful for you though, but I'm watching the show Paradise. I just finished season 1.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Oh, it's season 2 out? I didn't I
next
watched season 1. Okay.
next yeah.
That's a 1 week at a timer too, I
Yeah.
believe.
It
Yeah.
is.
The penultimate episode of that show, like I can't remember if it was like 7 episodes or 9, I don't know, but the not the finale, but the one before the finale
Mhm.
is so good.
Yeah.
Like that is one of the best episodes of television
The
of
one
all
where they're
time,
like
I think.
gearing up to like
Yeah.
Sinatra. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's so good. Yeah, yeah. I love TV. I love it.
I think I'm like the rare person that loves TV more than movies.
Yeah, I do love a movie more than it. I'm really an indie filmmaker at heart. I love cinema, but TV is so fun. TV
Yeah.
is like a different level of engagement. Yeah.
Ugh. Okay, well, before we hop off, just wanted to see if there's anything else you want to add or anything else you want to say that we haven't covered yet.
Hmm. In season 3, episode 6, when Scott's suicidal and Styles comes up with the "You're my brother" speech, I was on set for that one. I was there when we filmed that, and it was like that's really when I knew the show was something special. Was when we shot that scene and like the Scott and Styles romance, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was exceptional. I loved their performance. I loved that speech that Jeff wrote. It was stunning. I loved it, and I might have to rewatch it now.
Ew. We are joined by a special guest, the composer behind one of the most iconic teen shows in television, Teen Wolf. Welcome, Dino Meneghin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. Super excited to chat with you. That show was my childhood. That show was everything for everyone, I feel like. And one of the main reasons was because of the music. So, kind of first, kind of walk me through the opening theme. It's one of the most iconic in television. How did that come about for you?
We tried, so there was actually a couple of different ideas about that. One, the first one was a remix of Duran Duran's Hungry Like the Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually I had the I forgot where I got the isolated tracks, the vocal tracks from somewhere, and I did a remix of it. Then they decided and then we had one that was because like I remember like really like that like main house like dubstep, that really kind of like bro step stuff, that sounds like Voltron,
Mm-hmm.
humping a dumpster or something. Sound that was like really in vogue at the time, so we did one like that. And then we did and then eventually like I came up with that little ostinato figure. uh, and we did it like that. So, and
Yeah.
that was the one that everybody latched onto, and that was really fun because wonderful drummer Victor and Drizzo played on that, and you probably heard Victor and Drizzo on a gazillion different records and stuff, and so that was really fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can still hear it even though I haven't watched the show in a few years. I can still just hear the theme song and just know it's about to start. So, moving a little away from just the theme and music in general, there's moments in Teen Wolf's where the music almost feels like a character in itself. Is that intentional, or do you think of certain themes having personality?
Well, sure. I mean, we had like a Hunter's theme, and there was a Scott and Allison Love theme, and
Mhm.
we had, eventually we had. I mean, because after 6, well, almost. I mean, depending of how you count it, 6 or 7
Yeah.
seasons. I mean, we had a lot of different themes. We had a Oni theme, and the fun part for me was that every season was sort of like, we didn't have a monster of the week. We sort of had a monster of the seasons, and they were always in sort of a different place in the world. So, when we did the whole thing with the Oni, you know, there was a lot of, I tried to incorporate some Japanese stuff in there. And then with let's see, I think it was season 3 that we were in Mexico. And so then I got really into Sanjuroko and kind of incorporated some of that into what we were doing. So that was a fun part for me. Oh, and then there was, of course, the Druids,
Yeah.
which, have no musical tradition that we know of because there's no written music or Druids didn't write a whole lot down. I remember I contacted an ethnomusicologist at UCLA and was sort of asking about if there was any hint of what Druid music might be like. And so then, we ended up sort of doing this. That ended up being the whole Duroc theme.
Yeah, that's super cool. One that like stuck out to me was when it was Void Styles and you kind of just knew before you saw him just because of the music.
Yeah. That was a really good season. That was a
Yeah.
great season.
Probably my favorite season for sure.
I think a lot of people's favorite season.
Yeah. I guess moving off from that, you kind of hinted at it a little bit. Were there any specific characters whose themes kind of evolved over time or changed as they grew throughout the seasons?
I mean, I feel like the character that changed the most was Scott because he went from uh, really being this almost annoyingly innocent guy who would, sort of never, he was just so innocent and he would never sort of, he'd never kill anybody. He was the true alpha and all that stuff. And then but he sort of, I feel like I mean, obviously the actors spend a lot more time with the characters. So as they spend more time with characters, they kind of evolve into those roles. And I thought that, I feel like the character that had the most progression was probably Scott.
Agreed. Yeah, he went through a lot for sure. I guess next question for you, is there a cue that you kind of knew from the beginning would either devastate fans or get them really excited?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I'll tell you the one this isn't really about the fans, but this was sort of like my make or break cue, was the, uh, in the very first episode when Scott transforms in the bathroom. That was sort of the first really big cue that I had to write for the show because there was no main title the first season. That
Mhm.
was really the first piece of music that I had to write where I was pretty nervous about how everybody was going to receive it. And that was the one that once Jeff Davis heard that and he really liked the approach to that, then it sort of kind of locked us in a lot. So that was I don't know if that was in terms of the whole story, that's probably not one that people remember. The Scott and Allison Love theme was one that
Mhm.
I, spent a lot of time on. And yeah, that one. Um, a lot of stuff actually in the finale, I really thought about a lot how it would be received because it was, a lot of it was taking these themes that we'd been using for, almost 100 episodes and then sort of playing the final version of them. So I felt a certain amount of pressure just to deliver and make sure that everybody felt like they really got a payoff.
Well, you did a great job, seriously.
Thanks.
I guess next one, going off that, did any responses from fans ever surprise you in terms of either the music or just your work as a whole working on the show?
Well, there was one guy who emailed me who said he was going to get a tattoo of one of the themes,
Oh,
which I
super.
thought was pretty cool. What's so, what's really kind of touching to me about that is that it, I'll get like emails from people sometimes and they'll say that, the show meant something to them or it really, you know, it was important to them. And I think that, obviously it was, kind of a silly show about werewolves and we all knew we were making a silly show about werewolves. And it was, very dramatic. I mean, it was like a telenovela, it was just very like, over the top. And, we like the music was very over the top. Everything was just, bigger and, um, within that, I think that there were things that I know that Jeff tried to do, Jeff Davis, the show's creator and showrunner, and I think helped people. I think like one of the things that I think was cool about the show is that, the any of the kids that were the characters, that were gay or queer, it wasn't really treated as something you had to acknowledge. It was just part of the show. And I think that meant a lot to people. And, even at that time, that wasn't all that common.
Hmm.
So I think that, that meant something to people. And that, I mean, the show was, we all like worked our butts off on it. I mean, we all worked really, really hard and just not a whole lot of sleep and put like way more time than you would think into the show because people like, when we were all just obviously invested in doing a good job because it's our job. But I mean, you work on something long enough, you really care about it. And so, it started off as kind of this, you know, silly remake of, this goofy movie about a werewolf kid. But, we all really invested a lot in it. So it was, we all, I think, the thing that I heard a lot from people is like, this show has no right to be as good as it is.
Yeah.
And like, it's not like we did everything perfectly, but I mean, it's just that there was, um, we all took it very seriously. So we were all, whatever you see, even if it, there's something that looks goofy or we didn't have enough money to, get a monster that looked right or whatever, it's, we all tried really hard.
And you got to think about the time it was too. Like it was before some advancements for sure. So you guys were absolutely doing the best with what you had at the time and made it great. Are there any musical motifs that casual viewers might not notice, but they're kind of woven throughout the series?
Honestly, a subtlety was not something we did a whole lot on that show. So I don't, it wasn't, I don't think there was a whole lot that you wouldn't miss. I mean, everything that we did was pretty big.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, well, in the first season, I had this, atmospheric sound that I used a lot, and it was actually a sample of my friend's dog howling, and then
Wow.
I slowed it down, and that was, her name is, the dog's name is Beatrice, and so Beatrice was used quite a bit on the first season, and there were things like, oh, I think it was season 4 where we had Isaac and he had his dad who was really hard on him. And there was a scene, I think it was in the first episode of that season, where Isaac is sitting at a dinner table with his dad and his dad is sort of like like really climbing into him because he didn't do well. He got a bad report card, and so he's asking Isaac. He's like, I'm trying to remember. He says like, what grade did you get? And Isaac says a D, and like right when he says that, all of the celli that are playing coalesce onto a D, and they're all playing a D at the same time. And it was like just a dumb joke that seemed funny to me at the time that nobody would ever know about. But so, I mean, when you're doing stuff at like 3 a.m, you think
Right.
stuff is hilarious.
No, that's cool though. Yeah, Isaac was also one of my favorite characters for sure. Moving on, is there a moment where the music changed how you personally viewed a character?
Hmm. How I viewed a character. That's a really good question. Well, I'll say I don't know how to answer that exactly because sort of the music, I mean, obviously I'm making the music with my perception of the character. So the music, it's sort of more that, if my perception of the character changes, the music is going to change. The music isn't necessarily going to change my perception of the character. But I'll say one thing that I always try, I mean, not always, but, we had for the characters, I mean, we had some bad guys that were just bad guys. But for the characters that were like the bad guys that were a little more layered, I always tried to give them a little bit of pathos and humanity and I tried to do that, in the music as much as I could because one of my favorite techniques in horror is to really explore the motivations for your said bad guy. When you do that, it's a lot more scary and generally more disturbing. And it becomes a little bit tragic when we can identify with our, bad guy that for, whatever horrible thing they're doing, they have some kind of motivation for it. So that was always something that I was really conscious of with characters like, the Duroc, or I'm trying to think of some of our other real baddies. There was, some of these, I should have brushed up on these. There was also the guidance counselor, I think in season 5, who was the hunter. Maybe it was season 6. So yeah, basically just trying to adapt the point of view of our bad guy, because nobody thinks
Yeah,
they're the bad guy.
exactly. Yeah, that's so true.
Uh,
Next question, is there like a most, in your opinion, underrated kind of musical moment in the series?
I mean, a lot of my favorites. I really liked how the opening of the finale came out, the chase scene with Scott, and that whole, or no, actually, it was Scott's not running at the beginning. It's the other kid. I really
Link.
liked how that came out. That's maybe one of my. There's another one also called. It's on the soundtrack, and it's called Second Floor. That was, and I'm trying to remember what season it was from, but I remember it was this whole bit where they were in the hospital and they were like going up and down the elevators. And it was I mean, we had a lot of comic moments, but that was one of the comic music can be really hard to do. Like in a weird way, it's a lot easier to do something like big and huge, but doing comedy can be challenging because you really have to, music can't really be funny. I mean, it can be, but it's when you're doing music around comedy, you really are there to just sort of kind of hit the punches and let the performances go. So in most cases, like the music, I always think of the music as playing really straight. And the straighter I can play the music, generally the funnier the comedy will be. And that was just one that I felt like I found a way to approach that one that I thought came out well.
Nice. Do you think just working on the series for so long kind of helped you grow in your career and like learn anything new about yourself as a composer?
Well, I mean, God, I mean, taught me everything because I didn't really know how to write for picture when I got the job. He's sort of, I mean, I kind of bullshitted my way into the job, I think. I mean, I really wanted the job, and I had been on tour at the time working as a guitar player.
Mhm.
And I was friends with Laura Webb, who's the music supervisor, and we're still friends. And she had called me, and I just happened to have a few things in my portfolio that sounded kind of, like cinematic. But,
Yeah.
I didn't know shit about writing. Oops, sorry, I don't know if I can. I didn't know
No, you're
anything about writing for, for film. And so I kind of learned on the job. And, there's some things that I'm like, oh, that could have come out better. But it was kind of one of those, I'm sure they hired me because they probably couldn't have. It was just like they probably didn't have the money to hire anybody who had any experience, and so I just got the job. And so, but I'm really grateful for that because it sort of changed the whole course of my life. And so yeah, I mean, the whole thing, and it introduced me. Jeff was really great to work with, and I always like working with Jeff. We developed a real rapport. Like the thing is when you work with people on like a TV or a movie project, you have to develop a language. A lot of times, my job is to really interpret somebody's feelings. I don't expect them to understand music. And in fact, it's a lot of times better if they don't. What's often much more difficult is when somebody knows a little bit about music and then they'll start trying to use musical terms, but it's not really what they mean. And so, I always tell people, just like, tell me how you want it to feel and let me worry about how to make that happen. And Jeff and I, over the course of, the years, we developed, like, I knew when he said bigger, what bigger meant, or if he said scarier, what scarier meant, or, more tender or whatever. And that, that's different for everybody, what they mean. So I think,
Yeah.
we all develop, we all, a language between myself and the editors and Jeff and Joe Janier and the writers, and we all kind of worked together that way. And I mean, and honestly, like, I mean, I am still very close friends with a lot of the people that I met on that show.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, you work with them for so long, and it's like a little family unit just made from the show.
Yeah, it's like that. I mean, it's sort of like that. It reminds me a lot of just it's very similar to like being in a band or being on
Mhm.
a tour. Like before I did this, I used to go on tour, and it's like when you go, you're in a you're touring with 4 or 5 other people in, well, sometimes a van, but, if you're lucky, a bus, and like you're sleeping in the bus together and you're eating together. And it's like you become very close with people. And then usually what happens is after the tour, like if you're not gonna, if that's a one-off, if you're not gonna work with them again, then a lot of times you just end up losing touch. But, with this, it's like, I ended up staying really close.
All right, next question. Is there any theme or cue that feels like the heart of the show for you? Aside from the opening theme, of course.
Well, I mean, I was gonna say the main title because we did use that. We did use
Yeah.
the Hunter theme. We used a lot, but I feel like those, I mean, on it, like kind of like there was also a Scott Hero theme. Those 3 were sort of like the triangle that we kind of built everything off of.
Yeah. The main title is like I said at the beginning of the interview, that's what I always am drawn back to also. And definitely now that you're like saying it to me, I'm like imagining the Hunters theme and like when they're all gathered up together ready to go out.
Mhm.
And I can definitely see what you're talking about. This next question, non-Teen Wolf related, but just kind of about you.
Hmm.
Is there anything that you're listening to, watching, or reading nowadays that you'd like to share?
Ooh, let's see. What have I been listening to lately? I'm a big Missy Mazzoli fan.
Mhm.
She's a concert composer, very in the concert world. She's very well known. I don't know how many Teen Wolf fans know her work, but if you don't know her work, go look
Check
it up.
her out.
You won't be disappointed. And what am I reading? I just started a really cool book that my wife gave me about the it's about the period of time in New York around when Miles Davis was recording his famous album Kinda Blue. And so it's about all the sort of personalities that were involved in that.
Cool.
And what am I watching? I was trying to get through all the Oscar movies. And I thought Sinners was great. I really enjoyed One Battle After Another. I always enjoy Johnny Greenwood's scores, especially. And so I'm about 3/4 of the way through Begonia, and from what I understand, it gets a lot weirder from where I left off. So I want to see where it goes. But so yeah, so I really like Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons. So I was enjoying it so far. So I imagine it's going to get more and more disturbing. Um, I'm I'm always really grateful that I still get like emails from people who are, you know, watching the show. It's just it's nice to know that like that it means something to somebody um in a place that I haven't yet had a chance to visit. Yes, that's yeah. So I just think it's really sweet, and it's nice to have sort of a positive impact like that.
Well, thank you so much, Dino. I really appreciate it.